Sarah lived in a small cabin in Texas, far away from any big towns. Her days were quiet, filled with chores like tending her garden and looking after her chickens. The sun shone bright, and the wind whispered through the tall grass around her home. She liked the peace and quiet, but sometimes it got lonely. Her nearest neighbor was miles away, and visitors were rare. Most days, the only sounds were the buzzing of bees and the songs of birds. Sarah was a strong woman. She had to be, living so far out on her own. She knew how to fix fences, chop wood, and even hunt if she needed to. She wasn't afraid of hard work, but she did miss having someone to talk to. Someone to share a cup of tea with and tell stories to. She hoped that someday, things would change. Little did she know, her quiet life was about to get very exciting and that the bravery she possessed would be tested. One hot afternoon, as Sarah was hanging laundry, she saw a cloud of dust in the distance. At first, she thought it might be a storm, but then she heard the faint creak of wagon wheels and the rumble of hooves. It was a wagon train, making its way west. Wagon trains were groups of families traveling together in wagons, hoping to find a new home. Sarah knew wagon trains faced many dangers. There were wild animals like wolves and bears. Sometimes, the weather could be harsh, with scorching sun or sudden storms. And there were bandits, who would try to steal their supplies. Seeing the wagon train filled Sarah with a mix of excitement and worry. She was excited to see new people, but she also knew the dangers they faced. She hoped they would pass by safely, but deep down, she feared something bad might happen. She watched as the wagon train slowly made its way closer, each wagon a little house on wheels, carrying families and all their belongings. Sarah's fear turned out to be right. As the wagon train lumbered past her farm, a group of bandits suddenly appeared, yelling and firing guns into the air. Horses whinnied in terror, and people screamed. The bandits were rough-looking men with bandanas covering their faces. They rode quickly, trying to surround the wagon train. The wagon train families tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered. The bandits began looting the wagons, grabbing anything valuable they could find. A fire started when a lantern was knocked over. Flames quickly spread from one wagon to another. The air filled with smoke and the smell of burning wood. Sarah watched in horror as the attack unfolded. She knew she had to do something, but she wasn't sure what. The bandits were dangerous, and she didn't want to get hurt. But she couldn't just stand by and watch as innocent people were robbed and their belongings destroyed. The chaos was overwhelming, and the flames grew higher, licking at the sky. The screams of the people in the wagon train spurred Sarah into action. She couldn't stand by any longer. Without thinking, she ran towards the chaos, her heart pounding in her chest. The heat from the flames was intense, and the smoke stung her eyes, making it hard to see. She dodged panicked horses and running people, making her way towards the burning wagons. She saw one wagon engulfed in flames, the wood crackling and popping. People were shouting that there were children inside. Fear threatened to stop her, but she pushed it aside. She had to try. She wrapped a wet cloth around her face to protect herself from the smoke and heat. Taking a deep breath, she ran towards the burning wagon, determined to save anyone she could. The flames roared around her, but she kept going, driven by a courage she didn't know she possessed. The smell of burning wood and fabric filled the air. She could hear babies crying. Reaching the burning wagon, Sarah saw that the canvas cover had already burned away, leaving the inside exposed to the flames. She peered through the smoke and saw two small cribs, side by side. In each crib lay a baby, crying and reaching out their tiny hands. The flames were getting closer, licking at the cribs. Sarah knew she had to act fast. She quickly assessed the situation. The heat was unbearable, and she could feel her skin burning. She couldn't stay inside for long. She reached into the first crib and gently lifted the baby, shielding it from the flames as best she could. She quickly carried the baby out of the wagon and handed it to a woman who was standing nearby, crying. Then, without hesitation, she turned back towards the burning wagon, ready to rescue the other baby. The wagon groaned and creaked, threatening to collapse at any moment. Just as Sarah reached for the second baby, a large piece of burning wood fell from the wagon roof, narrowly missing her. She coughed, choked by the thick smoke, but she didn't give up. She grabbed the second baby, holding it close to her chest, and ran out of the wagon as fast as she could. The wagon collapsed just moments after she escaped, sending a shower of sparks and embers into the air. Sarah stumbled away from the wreckage, gasping for breath. She handed the second baby to the grateful woman, who held both twins tightly, tears streaming down her face. Sarah looked back at the burning wagon, her face smudged with soot and her clothes singed. She was exhausted and scared, but she felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had saved the babies. She had done something good in the midst of all the chaos and destruction. The bandits, having grabbed what they could, rode off into the distance. The wagon train was in shambles. The wagon train families were heartbroken. Many had lost their belongings, and some were injured. They thanked Sarah for her bravery, but they were in no position to offer her much help. They had to keep moving. They needed to find a safe place to rest and regroup before continuing their journey west. The woman who had lost her wagon and nearly lost her babies thanked Sarah with tears in her eyes. She promised she would never forget Sarah's kindness. She told Sarah her name was Mary and that her husband, when he returned from hunting, would want to thank her too. The next morning, the wagon train packed up what was left and slowly moved on. Sarah watched them go, feeling a mix of sadness and satisfaction. She was sad to see them leave, but she was glad she had been able to help. She returned to her quiet farm, the image of the burning wagon and the faces of the twins forever etched in her memory. Her clothes still smelled of smoke. Years passed. Sarah continued to live on her farm, her days filled with the familiar rhythm of chores and the changing seasons. She married a kind man named Thomas, and together they built a life filled with love and laughter. They had 2 children of their own, a boy named Samuel and a girl named Emily. But even as her family grew, Sarah never forgot the twins she had saved from the burning wagon. She often wondered what had become of them and their family. She hoped they were safe and happy. She sometimes told her children the story of the wagon train and the fire, teaching them about courage and the importance of helping others. Samuel and Emily loved hearing the story, and they admired their mother's bravery. They knew that she was a special woman. Sarah's act of heroism became a treasured family tale, a reminder of the good that can come even in the darkest of times. The memory of the twins was a quiet ember in her heart. One morning, Sarah and Thomas were working in their fields when they saw a large group of riders approaching. They weren't settlers or cowboys. These were Comanche warriors, their faces painted and their horses adorned with feathers. The Comanche were known to be fierce and skilled fighters, and many settlers feared them. A wave of fear washed over the nearby community. People hurried inside their homes, locking their doors and windows. They knew that encounters with the Comanche could be dangerous. Whispers spread about possible raids and attacks. Sarah felt a knot of worry in her stomach. She had heard stories of Comanche raids, and she knew that they could be ruthless. She quickly gathered her children and brought them inside, making sure the doors were locked. Thomas grabbed his rifle, ready to defend his family and his home. The sight of the Comanche warriors was both impressive and intimidating. They waited anxiously to see what would happen next. The air was thick with tension. To Sarah's surprise, the Comanche warriors didn't attack. Instead, they rode directly towards her farm. The other settlers watched from their windows, holding their breath. The warriors stopped just outside Sarah's gate. A tall, imposing man dismounted from his horse. He wore a feathered headdress and carried a long spear. He looked at Sarah with piercing eyes. He spoke in a language she didn't understand, but then he switched to English, his voice deep and resonant. "I am Walks with Pride," he said. "I have come to find the woman who saved my sons." Sarah was confused. What sons? Then, she remembered the twins from the burning wagon. Could it be possible? Walks with Pride's words hung in the air, silencing the fears of the community. All eyes were on Sarah, waiting to see what she would say. The tension was almost unbearable. The past had come back to find her. Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. I was there, she said. I helped those babies. Walks with Pride's stern face softened. He nodded slowly. My wife, Mary, told me of your bravery. She told me how you risked your life to save our sons. She died of sickness not long after, but she never forgot you. Before she passed, she made me promise to find you and repay the debt we owe. He paused, his eyes filled with sorrow. My sons, Little Bear and Swift Arrow, are all I have left of her. You saved them, and therefore, you saved me. For many years, I searched for you and your land, for the wagon train scattered and I had little to go on. Finally, through trade with other tribes, I learned where you settled. Now, I am here to show you my gratitude. The surrounding settlers watched, amazed by the unfolding scene. The fierce Comanche warrior was speaking of gratitude and debt to a white woman. It was a sight they never thought they would see. Walks with Pride gestured to his warriors, and they brought forward several horses laden with gifts. There were blankets woven with intricate patterns, silver jewelry, and finely crafted tools. These were valuable items, representing a significant portion of Walks with Pride's wealth. These are gifts to honor you, he said to Sarah. They are a small token of my gratitude for saving my sons' lives. Please, accept them. The settlers gasped at the sight of the treasures. They had never seen such riches offered to one of their own by the Comanche. Thomas looked at Sarah, wondering what she would do. He knew that accepting the gifts could bring prosperity to their family, but he also understood that Sarah had her own reasons for doing what she did. Sarah looked at the gifts, then back at Walks with Pride. She thought about her family and the hardships they had faced. But something else was stirring in her heart. It wasn't about wealth or possessions. It was about something much more important. Sarah took a deep breath and looked Walks with Pride in the eye. Walks with Pride, she said, her voice clear and strong. I appreciate your generosity, and I am honored by your offer. But I cannot accept these gifts. A murmur went through the crowd of settlers. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Why would she refuse such a generous offer? Walks with Pride looked surprised, but he didn't interrupt. He waited patiently for Sarah to explain. What I did that day, Sarah continued, I did because it was the right thing to do. I didn't do it for reward or payment. My reward was knowing that I saved those babies' lives. She paused, then added, but if you truly want to repay me, there is something you can do. Something that would mean more to me than all the riches in the world. The air was still as everyone waited to hear her request. The sun beat down on the quiet scene. I want peace, Sarah declared, her voice echoing in the stillness. I want peace between our people and yours. There has been too much fighting, too much bloodshed. I want my children, and all the children in this community, to grow up without fear of the Comanche. The settlers murmured in agreement. They longed for an end to the conflict. Walks with Pride considered her words. He knew that peace was not easy to achieve. There were many in his tribe who distrusted the white settlers. But he also saw the sincerity in Sarah's eyes. He saw her courage and her compassion. It is a difficult thing you ask, he said. But I will consider it. I will speak with my elders and my warriors. If it is possible, I will make it so. He paused, then added, tell me, what makes you think that such a thing is even possible? The question hung in the air. Sarah looked at Walks with Pride, her eyes filled with hope. Because, she said, I believe that people are not born to hate. Hatred is learned. And if it can be learned, it can be unlearned. Your sons, Little Bear and Swift Arrow, they were saved by a white woman. That means something. It means that we are not all enemies. She continued, I know there are bad people on both sides. People who want to fight and steal. But there are also good people. People who want to live in peace. We have to focus on the good, walks with pride. We have to show our children that peace is possible. Walks with Pride was silent for a long moment, considering her words. He saw the wisdom in her eyes, the truth in her heart. He thought of his sons, and how they would grow up in a world filled with conflict and fear. He didn't want that for them. He wanted them to know peace. Finally, he nodded. I agree, he said. We must try. And so, a friendship began to blossom between Sarah's family and Walks with Pride's tribe. It wasn't easy. There were still those on both sides who were suspicious and distrustful. But Sarah and Walks with Pride were determined to make it work. Walks with Pride and a small group of warriors began visiting Sarah's farm regularly. They shared stories and knowledge with the settlers. They taught them how to hunt and track animals, how to find water in the dry land, and how to protect themselves from the harsh weather. The settlers, in turn, shared their farming techniques and their knowledge of building and tools. Slowly, the fear and distrust began to fade. The children of the community started playing together, Comanche children and settler children, learning from each other and forming friendships. Sarah and Walks with Pride watched them, their hearts filled with hope for the future. The peace they sought was slowly becoming a reality. It started with one act of courage, and it was growing into something beautiful. The Comanche, with their deep understanding of the land, were able to warn the settlers of approaching storms and other dangers. They helped them to build stronger homes and to protect their crops from wild animals. They even shared their knowledge of healing herbs and medicines, helping to keep the community healthy. In return, the settlers helped the Comanche to improve their farming techniques and to build more permanent settlements. They shared their tools and their knowledge of carpentry and blacksmithing. They also taught the Comanche children how to read and write. The partnership between the two groups brought prosperity and security to the community. They learned to rely on each other and to trust each other. They realized that they were stronger together than they were apart. Even though there were still challenges and disagreements, they always found a way to work things out. The memory of the burning wagon faded, replaced by a brighter vision of a shared future. One day, as Sarah was tending her garden, she saw two young men riding towards her farm. They were tall and strong, with dark hair and piercing eyes. She recognized them immediately. They were Little Bear and Swift Arrow, the twins she had saved from the burning wagon. They dismounted from their horses and approached her, their faces filled with gratitude. Sarah, Little Bear said, "We have come to thank you. Our father has told us the story of your bravery many times. We are forever in your debt." Swift Arrow added, "We have grown up knowing that you saved our lives. We wanted to see you and to thank you in person." They presented her with a beautiful hand-beaded necklace, a symbol of their respect and affection. Sarah was deeply touched. She hadn't seen the twins since they were babies, but she felt a connection to them. She smiled and welcomed them to her home. She knew that her act of courage had not only saved their lives but had also brought peace and understanding to her community. Little Bear and Swift Arrow stayed with Sarah and her family for several days, sharing stories of their lives and learning about the settlers' ways. They played with Samuel and Emily, teaching them about Comanche games and traditions. They helped Thomas with the farm work, demonstrating their skill with horses and their knowledge of the land. Before they left, they promised to visit again soon. They said that they would always consider Sarah and her family to be their friends. As they rode off into the distance, Sarah felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. She knew that the future was uncertain, but she also knew that her act of courage had made a difference. She had saved 2 lives, and in doing so, she had helped to build a bridge between 2 cultures. She had shown that even in the midst of conflict and fear, peace and understanding were possible. The world was a little brighter because of what she had done. Her children waved goodbye, not seeing enemies, but friends. Time continued its steady march, and the peace that Sarah and Walks with Pride had worked so hard to create endured. The community thrived, a testament to the power of understanding and cooperation. Sarah watched her children grow, knowing that they would inherit a world far different from the one she had known. One evening, as she sat on her porch, watching the sunset, Sarah reflected on her life. She had started out as a solitary woman, living a quiet existence on the Texas frontier. But her life had been forever changed by one act of courage. She had saved 2 lives, and in doing so, she had helped to build a better world. She smiled, knowing that even the smallest act of kindness can have a ripple effect, spreading outwards and touching the lives of many. She knew then, that her life, though sometimes lonely, had been filled with purpose. The warmth of the setting sun mirrored the warmth in her heart. The legacy of peace would live on. The story of Sarah, the woman who pulled twins from a flaming wagon, became a legend in the community. It was a story told around campfires and at family gatherings, a story that reminded everyone of the power of courage, compassion, and the importance of seeking peace. And though Sarah was just one person, her actions had changed the world, one small act at a time. She proved that even in the face of great danger and adversity, good can triumph. She showed that even the fiercest enemies can become friends. So, remember Sarah's story. Remember that even you, with your own acts of kindness and bravery, can make a difference in the world. You can build bridges, heal wounds, and create a better future for all. Never underestimate the power of one small act of courage. For it is in those acts that the greatest changes begin. The end.